Ladies and gentlemen, we have officially entered a new era. Conveniently enough, tonight's Thursday local was indeed coincided with the release of the new Hero Strike structure deck, and as such I put the deck, or as much of it that I had together, and then bought my 3 copies of the structure deck and finished the deck up and played it at tonight's local. I ended up going 2-1-1 after 4 rounds, which I would say is a pretty solid effort. My 1 draw was against Burning Abyss, my 1 loss was against Cliff Fort, and my 2 wins were against another Cliff Fort and a Satellarknight. So overall, very solid performances. They did what they had to do. I think the only game where it kind of just went south was the first round. I did do a bit of a pretty bad misplay game too, but as for the rest of the matches, the deck was really solid. And for an experimental build, I was actually quite happy with the way that it turned out. Changes are obviously going to be in order, because there were a couple of bits and pieces that I would have loved to have had in retrospect, but we'll go through that as the deck progresses. On Sunday, I'll be going through the deck list first, and then doing a tournament report immediately afterward. So, the new era of Hero deck, which I've given the title Elite Mask Hero. Decided not to call it Me Heroes anymore, because I feel like Me Hero is just more of a title that would be bestowed upon a fun variant of the deck, possibly one that focused exclusively on the hero fusions and not have any sort of Exceeders and shit like that. And we'll probably run some crummy old stuff, something akin to maybe like a Manga Jaden deck, although without the Winged Kuriboh and potentially without the Thunder King. So, Elite Mask Hero is the new name for it, and we shall start off with 3 copies of the newly released Elemental Hero Shadow Mist. Now, I'm going to zoom in a bit here. We need to talk about Shadow Mist, because this thing is so stupid. It has 2 effects, which read, if this card is special summoned, you can add 1 change quick play spell card from your deck to your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 hero monster from your deck to your hand. Except Elemental Hero Shadow Mist. You can only use 1 Elemental Hero Shadow Mist effect per turn, and only once that turn. Now, the idea is that you don't really want to open it unless you have Goblin Berg, but the idea is that you want to get this thing out through some sort of special summonable means, whether that be the aforementioned Goblin Berg, Summoner Monk, Hero Lives. You want to get this on the field so that you can add your mask change, and then as soon as you've got your mask change, set that, wait until your opponent does something, and then basically just flip the mask change. Like, the most important, like, one of the more common things I did was, particularly against, stuff that's searched, like Cliff Fort and Deneb, I would wait until I summoned their stuff, or used their, like, Scout or something. I would then chain the mask change. So, and of course, since it being another turn, I would also get the hero search. So this thing is just absolutely ridiculous. That, like, it's at the point where Stratos is no longer needed. All that Stratos would really do is buff the deck up 2 levels where it would just be incredibly insane. Because you could... Actually, let me have a look, because I'm not too sure on the wording of Stratos' back row pop effect. Thankfully, I know exactly where to find my super rare copy of it. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I got one of the older copies, which is before Masked Heroes were even a thing, and it is safe to assume that it would work with all heroes. So if you had a couple of Masked Heroes, you could just Face Call the Haunted Stratos and blow some back row up, and that would make the frickin' deck even more busted. But, you know, it's just a way to blow up back row before, without having to use acid. But Shadow Mist, very solid, very powerful card to have in the deck. Definitely a must at 3. We then have 2 copies of Alias. Alias, it's not a bad card to have in your hand, but at the same time, it still sort of is. Like, it's a nice 1900 beat stick, so it can get over smaller bits and pieces, and you need to have this as well just so you can go into your Shining, because the Shining is still a pretty solid beat stick. A friend of mine who was playing the deck said he actually regretted playing not playing second Shining. Me personally, I was actually quite fine. You'll know when I actually get to the extra deck, you'll actually notice that I didn't really go into the Elemental Hero Fusions quite as much, and as I go through the tournament report as well. 2 Bubbleman, this thing is silly. I was really iffy on 3, just based on the fact that you kind of just want to stick with Bubbleman as something that you use to go into Xyz plays. But the thing with Bubbleman now is that using him to go into Acid and wiping back row is just so important. So I think one of the big changes to this is definitely going to be Bubbleman to 3. So that's really big, because Bubbleman is really good, and he's still as solid a top deck as ever if you've got nothing on the board. It's just the 2 draw is just so powerful. The surprise package came in the form of Elemental Hero Wildheart. Now this is by no means original. I have seen a couple of hero builds that gave Wildheart a crack, and so I gave it a crack myself, and most of the games I won were because I actually was able to do Wildheart and change it into a M Hero Dian. That is what that's basically the reason that this thing is in here for. It also helps, like, when you just drop this, it's not going to be able to it's not going to just drop dead by any sort of trap or anything like that. So it gets around deep prison and stuff like that if you want to get rid of really small creatures and stuff like that. But aside from that, you're gonna just want you to use this and go straight into a Dian and get the effective Dian when you kill something. I then have 2 copies of Goblin Berg. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I was the only one out of the 3 or 4 people at the tournament tonight that actually ran Goblin Berg, and Goblin Berg was actually pretty useful. I didn't see him that often, but he was still nice to have. I mean, it's a really good option to have if you've got a Shadow Mist and a ROTA, but you just don't have like any other means to get the special summon off, because you could just ROTA for this and do the same sort of thing. And Shadow Mist, the way the Shadow Mist is worded, does say if this card is sent to the graveyard, so that means it'll never miss timing, or if it's special summoned, it'll never miss timing. So Goblindbergh is really good. It's searchable. That's why I picked it over Goldfish. Then the 2 Summon Monk, the only non-searchable monster of the deck, but it is still very viable. Once again, not something I saw that often. Most of the time I got Shadow Mist out was either through the normal summon or through a Hero Lives. But the Summoner Monk is still really essential, because it's just a nice little solid 16 but it gets you the Shadow Mist, and it's an instantaneous, just pretty much 2 for 1. Actually, it is a +1, because it gives you your Shadow Mist, and that Shadow Mist nets you your Mask Change. So this is a +1 in and of itself. So I'd love to see Summoner Monk come back to 3, but with how silly this deck can be, it would not surprise me to keep it back to 2. On to the spells. Triple ROTA, no ecall because it's not necessary. You have enough search power in this deck as it is. The ecalls, in my honest opinion, I actually consider triple ROTA and triple ecall in this deck as actually having too much of a good thing. I opted for the ROTA because it did give you access to Goblin Berg. So that's why I went for that over the ecall. It's really not that necessary, because it's really superfluous to have just the 3 of these and 3 ecall, because you can clog with these search cards. And if your opponent like opens Thunder King or heaven forbid flips up a mistake, then if you have all those search power cards, you're going to drop dead in a miserable pile of crap. So yeah, you don't really need too many search cards. I think you've got enough in the form of the Shadow Mists and the Rotas. I think it's perfectly fine. Then triple Mask Change. You have to play this at 3. Like, literally, do not question it, because it's an absolute mandatory thing. It has to be done. This thing is your bread and butter spell card. It's freaking ridiculous. It's a quick play spell. That is what makes this deck so freaking silly, because your opponent can feel safe, and the next thing you know, you just flip this out comes one of these bastards. And then your opponent starts to squirm in their pants because they're on a macro. This thing is brilliant. Having said that, these are the only actual Mask Change cards that I actually ran. I didn't want to run Form Change because I didn't think that was a great card in the slightest. I also didn't run any copies of Mask Change Second because I was still rather iffy about that card. In retrospect, I might... Well, not even so much retrospect, but just thinking about it, I would probably like to test a Mask Change Second or 2 or something like that. just to sort of help back the mask change up as well. It's a nice little additional search if you find yourself running out of mask changes. So that's the thing. 3 Miracle Fusion, great top deck as always. I don't think I need to explain this thing that much. I mean, you've seen me drop hero decks like freaking clockwork back in the day. So pretty sure I don't have to say too much about the Miracle Fusion. I do have to discuss about the 2 copies of a Hero Lives. I didn't want 3, and the likelihood is that I'm not going to go up to 3 because I actually saw this enough at 2. One game against, I think it was Clifford. Yeah, it was against Clifford. I actually opened both of these. So, I basically just set them as bluffs. That's literally all that I did. I did not feel that I needed to just waste half of my life points to do anything. And of course, like, I only really use a Hero Lives if it's the only way that I have to get Shadow Mist on the board. Otherwise, I'm just going to set them as bluffs or just ditch them as fodder for Summoner Monk, because that's really the only purpose. That's the only real purpose that I feel this thing can serve. It's only there. It's primarily there just to sponge stuff, use as discard fodder, but still be there in case you absolutely have to use it. And the first turn Shadow Mist using the mask change is vital in pretty much every matchup that you play. And so, speaking of masks, 2 copies of Mask Charge. This is a fusion recovery for the masked heroes, I suppose, in specific. It reads, target 1 hero monster and 1 change quick play spell card in your graveyard. Add them to your hand. So, this I did not get off a whole lot. And this is actually kind of the reason why I'm thinking of running a Mask Change second. Because I found myself in situations where I had a Mask Charge, but I just did not have Mask Change at all. This thing was pretty much just sitting dead. For the most part, just sponging a hit, really. So, I do like it at 2 because it means that I'm able to see it to an extent. But I would never, ever, ever dream of running 3 because it would just clog up a shitstorm, especially early game. You have to have the stuff in the graveyard for it to go live. So, then play the triple MST because fuck Vanity's Emptiness. Snatch Steal, which I think I got off maybe once or twice, something like that. Have the Book of Moon, which actually saved me in the one game I won in the Burning Abyss matchup because I booked a BLS, so it served its purpose. Soul Charge, probably gonna cut it. I think the only reason I wanted to have the Soul Charge in there was to just have the quick get Shadow Mist, get a Mask Change to hand, and then basically just sit back. Or just go like, get 2 heroes and then just overlay them for something and get out of a tight spot. Most of the time, I don't think I ever really saw this that much, and I found myself sliding it out a fair few times. So, I'm thinking Soul Charge is probably going to come out. Then have the one Raigeki, your own personal off button for vanities as I continue to preach. Traps. Play the Triple Call the Haunted, which I have found to be pretty superfluous. I only really see 1 per game. Possibly, I think maybe once I saw 2. But I think for the most part I only saw the 1. And I don't think 3 is that necessary anyway. You're only really going to use it if you need to use it to get an Exceed play going. Or to just go like end phase, get back Shadow Mist, get the Mask Change, and then follow up the next turn with that Mask Change and get the Search. So I'm probably going to cut Call the Haunted down to 2 and bump Trap Stun up to 3. I believe I did get this off once. Once again, I didn't really see this all that often, so I think just I like to have this over something like a Royal Decree. I do side Royal Decrees, but I like this just so it turns off vanities just long enough so that you've got your very strong board consisting of a Dark Law and possibly something else, and then your opponent's now got to work their way around their own vanities. So, I think Trap Stun for Sunday is going to go to 3. I am going to play this on Sunday, no questions asked about it. I might put it away afterwards though, because there is a regional coming up and I want to test Satellinites for it. I feel a bit more comfortable with Satellinites, but this deck has actually proven itself really, really well. I have great confidence in this, so I may take this to a regional as well. This might actually be the chosen candidate for regionals. Then, the last three traps are the Compulsory Warning and Bottomless for very obvious reasons. So then, moving on to the extra deck, once I take a drink. Okay, that is now out of the way. So, 2 copies of Dark Law to begin the extra deck. Dark Law, I cannot find adequate superlatives to describe this thing. Its effect reads, must be special summoned with mass change and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Any card sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. Let's return if your opponent adds a card or cards from their deck to their hand, except during the draw phase or the damage step. You can banish 1 random card from your opponent's hand. Both of these effects are so freaking relevant. I actually made my opponent skip over his Scam effect because I dropped Dark Law. I basically just sort of sat back, I went, I went Wildheart. I made this guy, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and then basically used that thing's effect to get a Shadow Mist, and then get the Dark Law, and then from there he literally just, I went to end phase, and then he just drew for his turn. He did not want to go for the Scum because he was too afraid of me just hitting the tour guide that he added immediately. It like put him off of it, and then because it would have been fine in his case if I not had the book for his BLS, but I basically just went ram, that was it, and pretty much smacked him in the chops. And all because I had Dark Law pretty much influence his choices. I then have 1 Master Hero Koga, which I did not drop, but it was definitely a thought in the head. This guy's effect reads... Oh, okay. This guy's effect reads, must be special summoned with mass change, can be special summoned by other ways, blah blah. This card gains 500 attack for each monster your opponent controls. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can banish a hero monster from your graveyard, then target a face-up monster on the field. That target loses attack equal to the attack of the monster banished to activate this effect. So, you could sit back, not have to worry about a thing, and if your opponent drops like a huge-ass friggin' beat stick, you just sit back, let them swing, and it's just like, okay, I'll banish an Alias, your monster drops 1900 attack points, and I'm smacking you for whatever there is minus 3000 because they've got the 1 monster on the board. This thing is so freaking silly. It really is, in theory at least. Hopefully a day will come when I drop him, but who knows. What I did drop though was, more often than not, was Acid. Acid, oh wow, like, I know I've gone on a tangent about the Hero Nuke combo, which I did not get off at all today because I rarely use the Miracle Fusions nowadays and I've only got 4 monsters I summon through it. But this thing on its own is so freaking awesome. This thing is pretty much the equivalent of a board nuke because, I mean, in the case of Zero, your opponent's probably going to plus off it more than you do. So, you would only really want to hang on to the drop Absolute Zero in matches where they're not going to go plus. So, but Acid on the other hand is just so good against freaking everything. This actually won me for the most part. Well, it was a very integral part at winning me my round 3 Cliffort matchup. So, this thing is always the nuts. Always too good. Master Hero Dian. Now, this is another sort of thing. People don't really play this because, I mean, they don't play the Wildheart. Now, I kind of wondering why, because it's a 28 by 3k body that when it kills a monster by battle sent to the graveyard, you get a level 4 or lower hero monster special summoned from your deck. So the combo would be, like, if you had, depending on your opponent's, the situation of your opponent's monsters, you could have Wildheart, potentially have the Wildheart swing over something that's weak, then have the mask change into a Dian, run over another monster, possibly the bigger one, and then use this thing to get a Shadow Mist out, which will then in turn add a mask change to hand. Then you just swing with the Shadow Mist, assuming your opponent's board is empty at this point. Then mask change for Dark Law, get another 2400 damage in, and you've got that plus this 2800 stick, and your opponent has lost a considerable amount of his board presence. Just because you have a Wildheart of all frickin' things. Amazing. It's quite amazing. That's why I run it in this deck. Like, I saw the combo go off, and I'm just like, yes, this combo is lovely. And I kept opening Wildheart as well, so I was able to get the combo off a fair few times. So, now for the actual Elemental Hero fusions, I won 1 Ab-Zero, 1 Escuridao, this thing hardly ever comes out, 1 Shining, and 1 Gaia. I wish that I could run something like Great Tornado in here. I would easily run it if I had Stratos. Hint, hint. Pot-smoking economy. But these are the ones that I have to deal with. I don't really feel the need to run any more than 1 copy of each of these. Like, Absolute Zero is not really that great. Same thing with Escuridao. Gaia is just sort of an oddball sort of thing. And Shining being a beat stick, this is the most likely one that could probably see itself being put up to 2. But even then, I don't really see a reason to actually put it up to 2. I've never felt a need for the second one in any of the testing that I have done, because in most situations, like most of the games I've played, Absolute Zero is still a really, really solid choice. Like against Clifford, it's a really good choice to have. Against Satellinites, it just clears their board. It's really, really good to have. So, it's just, it's never been really that much of an issue for me thus far. So, that's all the fusion monsters. I run 6 Xyzs in the form of Excalibur, who is really, really nice. I would have gotten a 4K swing off had the opponent not pinpoint guarded. The Lavalval Chain, in a bit of testing that I did between rounds, I actually realized the reason I run the Lavalval Chain, and that is I had, one of my test hands, I had like a Bubbleman and a, what do you call him? Bubbleman and Goblin Berg, so I went for that combo. And so I proceeded to stack a Shadow Mist. And I already had the mask change prepared. At least I think that's the way it worked. Was it? Yeah, because it chooses a monster from the deck and places it on top of the deck. So obviously, you know, that's going to be a bit of a thing. It also, actually, funnily enough, if you need to get a mask change to your hand quickly, and like a hero to back it up, like Lavalval Chain is basically a first turn play it's sort of slow, like it gives your opponent a chance to actually set up something, but if you're able to play your way around it correctly, then this thing is going to friggin' save your ass in a hand that would otherwise be pretty bloody shit. Like, you could even dump a mask change, and if you've detached a hero, and you've got like a mask charge in hand, you can just get them back to your hand. So, Lavalval Chain is a very, very solid choice. And the Blade Armor Ninja for the double swinging, Castel because it is Castel, Cowboy for game, although in some situations I have felt that Cowboy is actually a possibility. I believe one game I could have actually won it by soul charging for 2 and then making Cowboy, but he'd already scooped already. Ragnar Zero, probably going to cut this, most likely for Excciton, because I felt like there were a couple of situations where Excciton might not have actually been a bad idea. I think there was at least one where I felt that Excciton was not a bad idea. So, I'm probably just going to cut Ragnar Zero for the Excciton, just because it's nice to have just the whole complete board wipe sort of thing every now and then. I think that's probably the thing I miss about it. Like, I rarely ever get it out, so... but I don't think I'll be getting Ragnar Zero out any more often. And thinking about it, though, as well, I was probably considering also maybe running a Crazy Box, because I ended up losing one game against Round 1 Cliffords because of Skill Drain. And Crazy Box would just completely run ragged. Okay, so onto the side deck. I sided Triple Flying Sea. This won me my round 4 matchup. I kind of ruined his side of the cards mode. He had no board, no hand, and he top decked ROTA into an Altair. Did his play, and then I dropped that on him, and he was very, very salty. I can't blame him for it. It's Flying Sea. It's so ridiculous. I also sided this in against BA, but never freaking saw it. Go figure. It is what it is. Mind Control, I saw this against Satella Knights as well. I think it was game 2 that I saw this. Just stole the Deneb, got, I believe, a Castel off, and just sort of kept pushing for damage. No, I went for Blade Armor Ninja, but got Bottomless, and I think I had a Miracle Fusion in hand as well, so I wanted to try to bait out that sort of thing. One Defusion, did not get any hero mirror matches, so that's the reason I did not side that in. My prediction, though, was pretty decent, because my initial thought was that nobody else was going to play the hero deck, but that was obviously well off, because I was one of at least 3 people who did. So that's the main reason I had the Defusion to begin with. One Twister, I started this in against pretty much anything that ran Vanities, and of course Cliffort. I believe I saw it once, but it got blown up. I think it got blown up, but it's not that it was that relevant, because I already pretty much had game. 2 Spell Shattering Arrow, sided in against Cliffort, never saw it. 2 Fairy Wind, sided in against Cliffort, never saw it. 2 Mask of Restrict, considered siding it in against both the Cliffort matchups and the BA matchup. Opted against it in all 3 cases because I did not know. I was flat out working 5 cards to side out, and these 2 would have made it 7 in the Cliffort matchup, as well as it would have made it 6 in the BA matchup. Although in my defense in the BA matchup, the only reason I didn't side it is because my opponent was going to go first, and if he was going to go Majesty's Feed, he would have done it on the first turn most likely, so I didn't have to worry about that. My choice, however, was somewhat vindicated when he milled both of his Majesty's Fiend off of the 1 Dante effect. So I showed him afterward, and he pissed himself laughing. I was just, you know, luck sort of happens, doesn't it? And then last thing I play is Royal Decree, which I did not side in, surprisingly enough. I don't think the Royal Decrees are actually going to be that necessary if I'm going to main Triple Trap Stun, so I'm probably going to cut these guys out. I want to at least put some Light Mirrors in, just so that the Satella and Lightstorm matchups are easier. I'm thinking I might try also siding something in against the Shadow matchup, because I don't think Defusion on its own is going to be that great against Shadows. That being said, though, Dark Law kind of wrecks Shadows right in the ballsack, but it would be nice to have some additional out to them, because I'd like to be able to just chain on Fusion area and just tell them, okay, yeah, they can take the they can have their monsters banished and just take the take on for the team, but they're still going to have a construct which will just rip the shit out of Dark Law. So I think that's my sort of idea about maybe putting some more sides in for the Shadow matchup. But that brings me to the end of this deck list after 28 goddamn minutes. I had so much to say about this deck. I was really excited for this deck. I was so hyped up about this deck, and it put in a really solid performance. I was quite happy with the way that it turned out. You know, it's definitely a contender for the format. I can't deny this at all. It's really, really good. So I'm not going to lollygag too much. I'm just going to cut the video here because it is nearly a half an hour in length. And so I shall see you for the tournament report.